by being told that you can't, or you could achieve more by stipulating the challenge that in most young people they have anyway. So we were able to do what they said couldn't be done.
Mayor James, what were your career ambitions? I know you spent some time in the Army and were stationed in Germany, correct?
Well, now I'm going back, like being a poor kid in the neighborhood when they used to pull a horse and buggy with fruit. I would take an apple off of it and run so I was fast. And I only weighed about 80 pounds early on in school, and the bullies wanted to beat me up and take money so I could run. I was fast. So I got a track scholarship, and they spring passing college for all the athletes, #1 physical education in America at the time. And so I was an athlete. I could run, I could jump. I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player. I went to baseball camp and got cut. I thought I was going to run in the 1960 Olympics, and I lost out in the trial. I was going to play professional tennis and got beat. I was swimming and then a 10-year-old beat me. So I was an athlete, and that's all I thought about. But when I went into the Army, and then in Germany, I met Elvis Presley, and he's singing these songs to me, and then I decided to come out of the Army. I applied for a master's degree at Springfield College, and that's when my life changed around, because I met Dr. Peter E. Karpovich, and he made me a guinea pig in a lab dealing with how the body functions under exercise. I was always wired, I was on scholarship, I was swimming, I was running, I was on a treadmill, and I had 2 publications doing all that. And then they sent me out to Washington State for a doctorate and a master's in science then, to do studies with the rats and everything. And I would go to the window and say, look at the football team out there. And get away from that. Ain't no football, forget that. I could not separate sports from research. Could not separate the people I knew on the football team from the laboratory. So I quit and came back home to Newark and started teaching at Newark. And then eventually, Ken Gibson sent Ruth McLean to knock on my door about a community choice team. And that's how I switched from being an athlete to becoming and someone heard about, but they said they want me to come down to the convention. I didn't know what that was. They said, you want to run for Southport County? I didn't know where Southport was. They talked about titles. I didn't know what they're talking about, because I was then wearing my Tom McCann black and white shoes, that checkered pink shirt, and checkered pink pants that we had won in a raffle. And Earl Harris said, you look like Bozo the Clown. And I said, well, and I kept that picture up there like Ken said, anything to be mad. But Earl said, Sharpe, they're not clapping for you. You look like Bozo the Clown. Look at that bad afro you got. Them shoes that, Earl was white shoes, the pants, the captain's hat. He said, you're Bozo the Clown, but you're with us.
Okay, so let's get into the politics and the government side of things, because that's where the real meat is here. And I want to ask each of you the same question. We both came in together in 1970. Mayor Gibson, obviously, as the mayor, and Mayor James as a council member. And after the civil disturbances here in 1967, the Governor's Commission that investigated them said that there had been, quote, a pervasive feeling of corruption in City Hall in Newark. And Mayor Gibson had this to say: Newark may be the most decayed and financially crippled city in the nation. My question is, why in the world would you want to get involved in politics and come into an environment like that?
The real reason that we wanted to get involved was not because of some study, but because of reality. We needed for our people to go to work in. So most people here don't remember some of the history. There were movie theaters in Newark that black people couldn't go into and sit downstairs. One of them was the Lowe's on Broad Street. There was a restaurant right up the street called Child's that you couldn't even go in and sit down. So a lot of people don't understand that segregation didn't just exist in the South. They had it all over. There was a club on top of Bamberger's called the Downtown Club that did not permit black people to be members. And I'll tell you a quick story. I got elected mayor, and somebody invited me to go to lunch at the Downtown Club, and I refused. So I'm not going to that place. They didn't want me before, I'm not going now. So some of me people tell me, you should still be bitter because things have changed. But my memory goes back a long way. My father used to tell me some stories, and he used language that I won't use here. But you can't tell me it's raining if it's something else. So we have to, those of us who are older folks, us old guys, have to prepare the young people and take advantage of some things that I refuse to participate in. I won't play golf because where I came from in Alabama, you couldn't play golf. You could only be the caddy. My brother plays golf because he's younger than I am, and he's not as bitter as I am. But I still have some bitterness in me that's not going to go away as long as I'm walking. There's some things I can't do about it, but that's the way it is.
Landscape that Mayor Gibson is talking about, just prior to the convention in 1970, black and white police officers not riding in the same car. We then had the federal government, United Community Corporation, created area boards to train minorities how to become leaders. Sharpe James came out of Area Board 9, Jesse Allen came out of Area Board, Errol Harris came out of Area Board, Donald Tucker came out of Area. We all were training to be leaders. But back then, there was so much racism in the city. Even after a football game, when Southside played Barons or what have you, they would stone buses and we had fights. There wasn't imperiality at that time, folks. I realized that. I was walking up Clinton Avenue once, and the cops jumped out of the car and arrested me and drew a gun on me, and I was frightened. And young man, I said, he said, who are you? What are you doing? You don't get long out there walking. I said, well, Judge Hazelwood is my uncle. I started name dropping. And he said, by then, the only respectable person was Judge Hazelwood. I said, Judge Hazelwood's your uncle? You can go ahead. So I escaped by using the name Judge Hazelwood, but it was that climate that made a Sharpe name. I fought 3 years to become president of Area Board 9 against Lee Bernstein, who was taking the federal money and not giving it to the community. I then became president of Weequahic Community Council. And then Dr. King died, was killed 1968, April 4th. You had all this spillover, and then we had the incident with John Smith, the cab driver, being arrested. It was terrible at that time, and leadership was needed, and the convention, the Black and Puerto Rican Convention was created, and the idea was, we're not gonna run against each other, we're gonna select who should run. And Ken was our hero because he had ran in 1960. And the convention wanted Ken to run, they wanted people around, people got mad and walked out, George Richardson. And when he left, he took the candidate from the South Ward was Reverend Horace P. Sharpe. me they didn't have a candidate from the South Ward to run. I said, well, go get that big mouth coat. Go get that afro coat. Go get the one running around the street acting crazy. The president, everyone out, Cal Kelly and I fighting in the airport down on Terry 315. And that's when they said, well, get the coach, get the athlete, he's gonna come in the bed. I know what they're talking about. But I went, and like I said, Earl said, you're bozo the clown, but you're welcome.
So I think we can all agree that the election of 1970 was a watershed election in the city of Newark. My question for both men, starting with Mayor Gibson, is this. You beat Hugh Addonizio in that race. Do you get the sense, or do you feel today that Addonizio was a bad man in heart, or was he just carrying on a corrupt tradition in City Hall that had been there for many years?
Addonizio was not a bad person. Some of us knew it very well. He had been in Congress. My father worked at the United Packing House Workers Union. And we used to write letters to Addonizio as congressman. It was Rodino and Addonizio, our congresspeople. Addonizio's problem, if I might inform some of you who don't know, he had a weakness. He was a gambler. There's all kinds of weaknesses in human life. But he was a gambler. He couldn't stay away from the bet. Some of the most intelligent people I've ever known had weaknesses. One of them was another councilman whose name I won't mention today. Probably the smartest councilman I've met in a long time. And a very serious gambling joke. And if you have a weakness, whether drugs or alcohol, then you end up being an addict. And when you have a substance abuse addiction, or whatever the addiction is, it's not as easy to get rid of it as a lot of people think.
No, one thing, guys, I think we've learned in politics, no permanent friend or permanent enemy. It changes. The Addonizio family, the sons and all of them, I see them all the time. They were happy that we came to the funeral. I remember the thank you letters, things like that. Today I was in the post office, a young man said, I know you, you know me. And as a politician, we get there, 5,000 people, you remember me. And you want to say yes, and I just hesitate. He said, I'm Leon Ewing's son. And I said, you the one that was a comedian? Yes. Now here his father ran against me in one of the most heated runoff elections for me to become Southward County. We ended up, the headline started as The Apprentice, Sharpe versus the builder of Leon Ewing book. He said, my mother still lived in that beautiful house in built Short Hill. She had to sell at Sharpe. She can't live there. But he hugged me. And he and his father had a heated campaign. In politics, you learn one thing. Don't take everything personal. And there's life after politics. And issues sometimes, as Ken is saying now, you're going to the end point, that's the worst one of all. You understand someone wants part of Prince, 300 million now, right? So that can bother, but it's just difficult times, guy. Politicians sometimes act one way in office, one way out. And sometimes there's a separation between the politician and the family. Carl Sharif and I have been at adversaries time. The children on that block of family never had that all over again. And there's my baby boy, there's my protection. They said, Sharpe, when did you know you weren't mad anymore? I said, when I got in the back seat of the car and it didn't move. You know what I mean? So now it didn't move, but I don't have no more protection. So there's my baby boy sneaking in there. Now that I have a baby, that's the Lord.
26, and you're facing numerous problems in the city of Newark. I'm going to name 4 of them, and maybe you want to pick 1 or 2 out to talk about a little bit. The first is budget problems. First year in office, Mayor Gibson is facing a $65 million budget deficit coming in the door. He tells the city they might have to cut 500 city hall jobs. And he proposes in his first term tax package a controversial 2% payroll tax. The next year, 1972, there are more budget problems. He says he may have to lay off 700 city workers, including policemen and firemen, close City Hall 1 day a week, and cut salaries by 15%. Mayor James faces the same problem coming in the door.
But I blame Ken Gibson, so I
He says in 1987, the year after he's elected, Mayor James says he may have to lay off 200 city employees and raise property taxes by 33%. You both always seem to be fighting the revenue battle year in and year out, and thank God, mostly to a successful degree. That's the one area that you shared in common as a major problem in Newark. Then there's the crime problem. The perception of Newark as a crime-ridden city. Coming off the civil disturbances of 1967, Newark had a very bad image around the country. In 1995, in a story that I did myself when I worked with the Star-Ledger, the FBI crime statistics for that year reported Newark as being the most dangerous city in America. Education is another problem that has seemed to plague Newark over the years. Mayor Gibson comes into office, and not long after he takes his seat in City Hall, he's faced with a teacher strike. Mayor James has the state takeover. Housing, also another problem that's plagued the city, that there's either not enough low income or market rate housing, or there's too much. If you could just maybe pick out one of those areas and talk about it a little bit, how it affected your term in office, what kind of time and energy you had to give to it, and whether or not that you felt that you were successful in responding to it. We'll start with Mayor Gibson.
Well, the easiest one to start off with is budget problems. Most people don't look at taxes on an overall basis. Newark, like most cities, depends too much on property taxes. Property tax is an archaic form of taxation. Is backwards. It's backwards for a basic reason, is that your property is not stable. Give you an example. Husband and wife living in a piece of property, being taxed. If one of them passes away, and it's usually the husband first, you end up with a widow having to be responsible for property tax on a fixed income, which she can't meet. So they lose the property. The city loses money. So taxes on property is an archaic form of taxation. Somebody said, well, what's the real answer? The real answer is graduated income tax. The federal government has co-opted graduated income tax. If we had the graduated income tax in Newark, with taxes being paid by people working in Newark, making money, we wouldn't have a tax problem. You all understand what I'm saying? There are thousands of people come to Newark every day, getting police protection, the best water in the country, and they leave with all the money and leave us with the problem. I'd like to tax them based on their income. we would not have a problem whatsoever. But you know, I will never be able to get that passed, but that's the answer.
1.4 million people, we say, on the average, take a payroll check out of Newark, but only 280,000 people sleep at night in Newark. Rutgers University, no taxes. UMD&J, no taxes. That's the kind of thought. Okay, Seton Hall Law School, no taxes. So we had the museum and library, which we love, no taxes. But being the largest city in New Jersey, we're the capital of New Jersey, not Trenton. We're the capital. We're the transportation capital. We're the insurance capital, the banking capital. The hotel went bankrupt in Trenton, next to the State House. The whole Marriott Hotel went bankrupt in Trenton, New Jersey. So we've always had a financial problem of not having, taxation without representation in the city of Newark, and it's been a fight. I would not have been successful if I had not learned 16 years watching, learning the man who wore Newark on his sleeves, not political. What did he do to turn our city around? And here was our engineer, Mayor Gibson, the first African mayor of a major East Coast city. He had to fight apartheid. Hello, folks. He had to fight a police department that didn't want to integrate. He had to fight all the community folks who wanted to separate the city into racial divide, and then do all that. So here's Sharpe James being Bozo the clown, being like the councilman, and I would watch Ken Gibson, and I realized that the problem was Newark didn't have enough tax rateable, and that's why I fought. Like, I take credit for Society Hill. Ken Gibson created the idea of Society Hill. Ken Gibson met with KRAR, and then they came in and said they were going to bring, they need $13 million because his land was contaminated and blah, blah, blah. Well, we overlapped, so I came in and said, I'm at $13 million now. Let's get the engineers from NGIT to come over and look at what they say. They got to bring in topsoil and encapsulate. We're going to build on top. The engineers went out there and say, the homes have oil tanks. If we pull up your oil tanks, the soil won't be contaminated. We spent about $200,000. We could build Society Hill. Ken's idea, but I got credit for it. And all of those things required, we went forward to make Newark a destination city. And Ken had to fight a council. Remember, folks, he didn't have a 6-4 or 5-4 majority. He didn't have that. And in the beginning, I had that. And that's why maybe when they said, well, Sharpe James, you keep praising the Pope, and you say you love the Pope more than you love the members of the city council. Aren't you wrong? Because you need 5 votes. Why do you keep saying you love the Pope more than the members of the council? I said, but you don't understand. All I gotta do is kiss the Pope's ring. You know what I mean? It's a big difference. So we have to work with a council to get things done. Ken did not have a supportive council during his years in office.
So this is a question for Mayor Gibson. You come in as mayor in 1970, and Ralph Abernathy, Whitney Young, Jesse Jackson show up for your inaugural. Expectations are very high about what you can accomplish. But within a year or two, people are starting to carpet you that you're more interested in taking care of the corporations in Newark than worrying about its people. In retrospect, were the expectations for you in the early years too high?
I don't know, I really believe that people should have high expectations. Some are achievable and some not. Most people don't remember the civil rights movement existed in Newark. They had the NAACP, they had organizations existed, and each of them would have an annual dinner, usually at the Robert Street Hotel, for 1,000 people. Once I got elected, those business people who supported those organizations said they're not going to support those organizations any longer. The mayor is black now, and he can take everything. Now, not only did they think I could do everything, but the people did too. I had more people lined up looking for jobs at City Hall than you would believe. The purpose of city government is not to provide jobs. It's not to provide jobs. In fact, I had a speech all the time. I would say, if I could run this city without providing jobs, I would do it. The purpose of the city government is to take care of basic services. Police, fire, sanitation. Not to provide jobs for everybody that wants to work for the city. And that's a hard thing to say to people who need a job, but the city cannot be the employer of last resort. Can't be done. We don't provide jobs in the city. We provide services, and hopefully we can do it at less cost.
Mayor James, my question for you. How much easier or harder was it for you to run the city of Newark after Mayor Gibson had already been the city's first African-American mayor?
Well, this is two questions to answer. The second man is never viewed with the love, respect, symbolism as the first. There's only one Jackie Robinson story, folks. There's only one Jesse Owens story, and everybody else is second fiddle. There's only one Kenneth Gibson. When I came in, they said, now look, tomorrow we want you to solve all these problems. There was no real love or what have you. It was almost like a resentment, and the pressure was to hit the ground running. And that's why I give credit to Ken Gibson, because he assisted me in that. Folks, can you imagine after I was mayor-elect, you get elected on June, whatever, May election. They don't take office July the 1st. Ken Gibson the next day came up to me and said, hey, I want to take you to Puerto Rico. There's a United States Conference of Mayors meeting out there. I said, well, what's that? He said, well, that's where the mayors and the government and all the elected officials meet. You need to be there. I said, all right, we go. So we go to that meeting, and all of them knew Ken Gibson because he'd been president. And he walks around the room and says, he knew him by first name. Mayor, I want you to meet Sharpe James. They said, James Sharpe? No, his name is Sharpe James. And they said, well, what are you bringing this guy around for? Well, he's the mayor-elect. Well, what are you bringing him around? Forgive him. And Ken deadpan, never forget this. He said, I want you to help him. I want you to give him the same cooperation you given me. Now, folks, that's never happened in the city of Newark since 1986. Where a man going out of office wanted to help and assist an incoming mayor. That's never happened before, city of Newark. I owe to Ken Gibson. And then he followed up, I think it was about a week ago when we came back. I was sitting in my office, getting used to this mayor's office, and they said, Mayor Gibson's here to see you. Come on in. He says, come on, have give you some advice. Don't ever meet one-on-one with someone. It's your word against their word. He gave me a whole week education of what to do. He did not want me to fail. He did not want me to make mistakes in the past. The highway